My trade is an opera stage director, and so I direct opera. And I wasn't an opera nut growing up. It kind of, again, I probably only watched one opera in high school, which was the obligatory grade 12 music class where we watched La Bohème. And if I hadn't gone into music in university, that probably would have been it. In university, I took we did one field trip. We came to see Opera Atelier, Incarnazione di Popea, which I did not like at all at the time. That was very boring and stuffy, but that was me then. I never would have thought that I would have ended up in the world of classical music and opera. But I did, and I sort of studied music, singing, and played the tuba, and didn't know what I was going to do with my life, and then someone said, you should check out opera, which led me to U of T, where I did a 2-year sort of post-undergrad diploma in opera directing, and then from that I just led to studying and interning and working in Oslo in Norway for on and off for about a year. And then the first assistant directing job I did was La Bohème at the Canadian Opera Company at the Four Seasons Centre. And that piece, if you've seen La Bohème or heard of it, it's about these poor starving artists who are connected. They're all friends, and it's about just how poor they are and enough that they're dying because they don't have enough consumption and food and all this stuff. So it sort of was first taste into big opera. You think opera is high, big, 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 lots of money, big, huge orchestra. And as an opera director who just graduated, I said, well, I can't just put on a show at the Four Seasons Centre. So quickly just said, well, I also, no one's going to hire me because I have no work to show for that. And so I said, well, I just need to do my own work. And so that's how it first sort of came about. I wanted to self-produce my own thing, and as soon as as kind of this series and anything you start from the ground up is, okay, well, where am I going to do this? And so that's kind of how it started in terms of searching out the right venue for what you want to do. And I didn't know that my company would kind of go this route, but it ended up being a search for either the venue that would suit the piece that we're doing, or we would find the right venue, and then we'd kind of say, well, what does this venue, what piece matches with this venue? And that kind of became a very interesting kind of juggling puzzle piece. So the very first piece that we ended up doing was La Bohème, but we chose the Transact Club, which, I don't know if you've been to the Transact Club in, it's not even a nice bar, really. It's just really dirty, dingy. We didn't have to add much to the set. Like, the light switches had all these dirty fingerprints, and just, they thankfully had a great selection of beer, which was nice, but that's kind of about it.
Where is it?
It's, if you go right along Bloor, and it's at the Future Bakery, if you make a left.
At Brunswick?
It's just
south of Brunswick, yeah.
From Bloor.
Great.
Yeah, so it was...
I can see it from my house.
We were aiming to have an orchestra, but that really didn't happen, and so we ended up playing on this very clunky upright piano, and we did the whole thing. And so another thing that made it interesting was I said, well, we don't have projectors to do surtails and all this stuff, so I rewrote the whole story, and I set it in the Transact in 2000, I guess we did in 2012, so it was set there, and the performers were sitting at chairs and tables like the audience was as well. So it's as if the two of you just sprouted up and started singing opera. And that was kind of a wonderful, go ahead, yes. And that was kind of the first big moment of just, this is something different. We couldn't do what happens at the Four Seasons Centre, so what can we do well? And we, rather than try to do something that we just couldn't do, we didn't have the financial support, it ended up working out very, very, very well. As Rory kind of said, that connection between the performer and the audience member wasn't as separated, and it was kind of blurred lines in terms of just, it was all the same. You didn't know which was which, and just, you could see people, and you could be this close to, as Rory demonstrated, and just this beautiful music, and just, it has a different experience. And from that, it just created this desire in our company to say, well, how can we give the audience member the best experience possible, from when you buy your ticket to when you hear about the event, through to when you show up and you're met at the door, to the whole entire performance, and then as you leave, and what's your experience after. What can we do differently than from the big to the small? And we really tried to play around with that with the sort of next big show that we did, which was we did an opera called Figaro's Wedding, which again was the marriage of Figaro, which is Mozart's opera. But we again retranslated the whole story and set it in 2013. And Figaro and Suzanne were getting married in downtown Toronto, and they needed to find the right place to get married. And so our venue was the 6th floor. It was called the Burroughs Building at Queen and Bathurst. And we sort of shot a YouTube video of Figaro proposing to Suzanne at the AGO. And all of a sudden you fell in love with these people, and then you kind of met them in another interview, so that when you showed up at the venue, you kind of felt like, I know these people already, and this is not an opera house, and so I'm going to give this a go. The venue was decorated in such a way that there was one room for the ceremony and one room for the reception, and people had to move back and forth between the two. And it just kind of created a different experience for all the people who were participating. We had a string quartet and a piano, so it was a sort of a wedding arrangement for the musicians and for the people who were there. And we had these pretend gifts that you got while you were waiting in line, so when you showed up on the 6th floor, you could say, where's the wedding table? And there you go. Our program was like the wedding invitation cards, where you see the maid of honor and all that jazz, and it was just sort of, how can we creatively show something different, which is all related to this sort of the 6th man, this other character, which is the venue. And that's something that it fits so perfect when Aziza was talking about sort of this salon, about just how important for us the venue can play. And for that reason, we've never performed, we've always chosen a different venue. We've never done 2 different things in the same venue. So it creates a ridiculous logistical problem, because each show you're starting from scratch. You have to find the plans, you have to bring in lighting, you have to bring in sort of the stage manager, which it's too bad Isolde was ill tonight. She would have talked about the challenges of different venues as well, but they have to get used to the space in a different way. You have to think about things like dressing rooms, and where do you put musicians' cases, and things like that, which aren't always suitable for a venue, depending on the venue. Another one we did this past June was a French opera, Debussy's Pelléas et Mélisande. And this is a very symbolic, a lot of symbolism in this opera, and we just wanted to find the right, again, venue, and so we chose an outdoor courtyard at 227 Front Street, which is the home office of the COC, and it was kind of, again, a unique experience where people came, and you could only fit about 100 people in this venue, so again, a different experience than if you had seen this at the Four Seasons Center. But in the very first scene, one of the characters says, I'm going to go stand by this tree. And literally, there was a tree right there that he could touch. And so for the performer, for the audience, it just created a different dynamic. And that's what we're sort of, that's what's exciting for us and for our company, is how can we create something different so that we're not trying to compete with what is already being done so well at the Four Seasons Center. And it's great, it kind of leads into Lawrence. I saw Airline Icarus, which was another opera which he produced at Soundstreams, which is, again, the venue kind of makes that place, and it was an expansive, if you saw it, it kind of simulated an airplane in this venue, and it was this expansive kind of panorama venue. So it certainly can influence and impact. The challenges are, personally, how do I take that and put that to a big venue as well? And my goal is to direct operas, and so I just did Carmen in Vancouver, and 25,000 people, 2,500. And how do you present, how do you make it intimate? Can you make it intimate? In Verona, in Italy, they perform in these arenas which can seat 75,000 people, and the way the acoustics are done, singers don't even need to be amplified. It's just how that's created, and so that is grand, grand, grand. So it creates different experiences, and that's what we're aiming to be. We have our opera coming up in December it's called #Uncle John. It's another updated version of Don Giovanni, Mozart's Don Giovanni, and it's set again in 2014, and it's sort of the modern man who has sort of passions and desires that he has. And so the venue for this is, again, Zerlina and Mazzetto are getting married, and so where, again, do you get married in downtown Toronto? And it's kind of, the venue we have is where the theater center used to be, and so it's kind of, in my mind, why did the theater center leave this building? Because they probably wanted something that was probably a little cleaner and a little more modern. But I kind of am the underdog, and so for this venue, it's kind of, well, there is something about this venue that is important and special. So that's kind of how I attack this, and it's a challenge every time because you're trying to pair up a venue with a project. So that's sort of our mandate in terms of creating accessibility in an intimate environment, and the environment always changes. And for the audience, you get to discover new places in Toronto that maybe you haven't seen before, and you get to see it in a new way as well.
Where will this venue be for the
So
opera?
it's just west of Queen and Ossington. It's called the Great Hall, but the Black Box Space. They have a beautiful venue called the Great Hall upstairs, which was booked, but then they also have this sort of black box space, which sort of has another sort of balcony tiered, but it's going to be decorated for a wedding. And Uncle John just happens to show up and created a habit. Yeah. So.
Hashtag.
Yeah, hashtag. Yeah, that's it. So thank you.